What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the November 19, 2022 edition of the SmackDown LowDown. Coming off of what I thought was a very good SmackDown, of course, I'm biased. I was there at SmackDown last night in Hartford, but I thought it was a really good show and thoroughly enjoyed it. So to open up the episode here, Jackie Redmond, Matt Camp run down the biggest headlines from the show, including recapping Ricochet versus Mustafa Ali in the quarterfinals of the SmackDown World Cup Tournament. A very good match, as I talked about my audio review of SmackDown from earlier today. The crowd didn't really care early on, but they did get into it in the second half. Largely thanks to Ricochet, and Ali had a great performance as well. Really fun opener there from the in-ring standpoint of the show anyway. So backstage, Ricochet catches up with, I think, not Kayla Braxton, but rather Megan Moran. And Ricochet says that Strowman is absolutely underestimating him going into next week's semifinal match in the World Cup. He's used to it at this point, and no one will stop him from winning. And he also calls himself a flippy flopper, as he did on SmackDown, which I thought was great, referencing the tweet from a few weeks ago from Strowman, that dumb tweet. I'm glad they're incorporating that into the tournament here. I think that's great on TV. And he'll show him what a flippy flopper is all about next week on SmackDown. Matt Camp also previews Ricochet versus Strowman next week on SmackDown, and I'll be at that show as well in Providence before Survivor Series on Saturday in Boston, so that should be a fun match to see live as well. From there, they replay the Bray Wyatt-LA Knight face-off from SmackDown, where Bray Wyatt apologized to LA Knight, and then LA Knight got quote-unquote even with Wyatt by slapping him twice. Bray Wyatt retaliated by attacking LA Knight, or seemingly anyway. We didn't see Wyatt on the scene, but we were led to believe it was Wyatt responsible for the attack outside of the arena. They also recap Shotzi versus Shayna Baszler, Shotzi beating Baszler via a roll-up. Ronda and Shayna tell Megan Morant backstage that Raquel Rodriguez disrespected them by coming out during the Shotzi and Shayna matchup. And Baszler said that next week they will both pay a tax, and Ronda said it's going to be limb by limb. So it's going to be a tag team match next week. They preview Ronda Rousey versus Shotzi for the SmackDown Women's Championship at Survivor Series, as well as next week's tag team match, as I mentioned, Ronda and Shayna versus Raquel and Shotzi in tag team action before Rousey and Shotzi for the title on Saturday at Survivor Series. Backstage, we did not see Legado on SmackDown this week, but Megan does catch up with all of Legado backstage, because it's going to be Santos Escobar and not Ricochet, but rather, I almost said Sami Zayn, Butch in next week's semifinal matchup in the World Cup. Zelina Vega says that the Viking Raiders, laid them out last week, Legado and Hit Row and everyone else. Of course, they would come for the fastest rising stars on SmackDown currently, she says, because they have buzz and the Viking Raiders don't. It was very weird to not see the Raiders in any form or fashion on this show, unless they aired a vignette for them that I did not see, but I paid attention pretty much the entire show being there. So I thought it was weird they came back last week, and there was not even a single mention of them this week. I thought that was very weird. But anyway, Escobar just kind of plainly says that he vows to win the World Cup for Mexico, and then the Intercontinental Championship for himself. Matt Camp says that Escobar has got to be the favorite going into the match against Butch next week, as Butch was, he's got other shit, has other stuff going on right now. Butch doesn't necessarily have to lose that match, because we're not getting, and we might get the finals at Survivor Series. If we do, then no, he will not be in that match. And then, it's pretty obvious he will not be in the finals of the World Cup. If they're not doing the finals on Survivor Series, and it doesn't sound like they are, because they're calling it specifically, it's kind of a mouthful, but the World Cup, the SmackDown World Cup on Fox. So the more they keep talking about that, it makes it sound like it's playing out entirely on SmackDown on Fox and not on pay-per-view. But I could be wrong there, because we're definitely not getting the championship match at the pay-per-view unless they did the finals on the show and then the title match later on in the show. I doubt they do that. But yeah, Matt Camp, as they mentioned, calls Escobar the favorite against Butch next week. They also recap the great closing segment where Kevin Owens came to the aid of Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, the Brawling Brutes, to join officially their War Games team at Survivor Series. And Matt Camp says that Kevin Owens has got to be looking out for Sami Zayn, hence why they came face-to-face but not to blows, which was interesting. And then he also questions where Sami Zayn's allegiance lies. That's kind of the story here, and that was really what us fans are thinking as well, which is why Matt Camp is very, kind of very useful with his insight on the product here, because he offers it from a fan perspective. That's exactly why Owens is in this match. Hurt or not, they had to have Owens in this match to further that story with Sami. Matt Kemp even referenced the fact that on SmackDown a month or two ago, he told him that the Bloodline shirt was shit or whatever, and a backstage segment lasted all of 2 seconds. It was maybe about a month and a half ago. That was probably the last time we saw Kevin Owens on SmackDown. There's a lot of history there, but clearly where they are going and have to be going is Owens and Zayn reuniting as baby faces and beating the Usos for the tag team titles. That's the only endgame that makes sense, and I laugh because I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, to close it out here, they also preview Drew McIntyre and Sheamus versus the Usos next week on SmackDown. The winning team gets the War Games advantage for Survivor Series. Pretty standard stuff here on SmackDown LowDown. The Rousey, Baszler, Legato, and Ricochet promos were all kind of short and sweet. Nothing overly great or memorable, but they were fine. So nothing really to see from this edition of SmackDown LowDown, but it did serve its purpose in recapping SmackDown, a very good SmackDown in my opinion. Again, biased because I was there, but still a very good show. Recapping that show, and also previewing next week's show and Survivor Series next weekend, which I'm looking forward to. So I don't know if I'm going to have a SmackDown LowDown review out next week. Probably not. I know I will not have a SmackDown audio review out because the show airs on Friday. I'll be there. I'll be away for Survivor Series weekend. I will be at Survivor Series, so very likely no SmackDown LowDown review next weekend. If there's an episode, I always review it, even if it's late, even if it's after Survivor Series, because there is stuff that happens on SmackDown that does not have to do with the pay-per-view. So I'll probably watch it and review it at some point early on next week. And not this coming week, but like the week after. And so just keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews. Have a very happy Thanksgiving next week if you celebrate. If not, have a great Thursday, and I'll catch your ass down the road.